good, everyone? What is good? Welcome back to another video. Today, we're jumping back into the Go Battle League arena, once again trying our luck in the MonoType Cup. And today, we're bringing some spice featuring Haxorus on the lead. Now, if you somehow haven't heard, Haxorus is an absolute glass cannon, and we're looking to take advantage of the limited meta. You might be surprised to learn that Haxorus is able to win its even shield matchups against Umbreon, as well as against all normal type Pokemon such as Vigoroth, Wooloo, and Lickitung, and is also able to win the 1s and 2s against Registeel and Ninetales. So we'll be using Haxorus in the lead, fishing for these ideal leads, but if we don't have them, we will be safe swapping into Hypno, which will be providing us coverage against other dragons with its Ice Punch, as well as against the Coffin with its Shadow Ball. Now looking back, Hypno may not have been the best safe swap. Coffin would probably be better here, as both Hypno and Haxorus do struggle a little bit against the Coffin. So if you're wanting to run Haxorus with the team, might be a good idea to start with a core of Haxorus and Cofagrigus. And then for our closer, of course, we have Registeel. Registeel provides us with the fairy type resistance that will obviously be hitting Haxorus for super effective damage, and also just has fantastic play, as we've mentioned before, against pretty much everything in the meta. But I think that's just about enough of me talking. Let's go ahead and hop straight into some battles. We will have a little bit of a shorter video today. It'll just be one set, but hopping into the first battle, we have a tough lead with Seviper on the lead against Haxorus. As Haxorus is running the fast move of Counter, which is a fighting type move, it will be resisted by the opponent's poison type snake, and as such, we will be pivoting out into our Hypno. The opponent actually stays in for quite a few confusions, which does do valuable damage onto the Seviper, allowing us to reach this Shadow Ball onto the opponent's Clefable. Clefable able to charm down, so here we do see a charm Clefable. That's a little bit problematic, as if it were a Fairy Wind Clefable, we may have been able to come back in with Haxorus and go for the aggressive farm down while expending one shield. But like this, we will have to absorb that Moonblast damage onto our Registeel, beating out the Clefable before it gets to another fast or charge move, firing off this Focus Blast and easily able to knock it out. We pivot back into our Haxorus as the opponent brings back in their Seviper, and this breaking swipe will be putting heavy pressure on the opponent's shields, and they do choose to expend their first shield. Haxorus now will be taking significant damage, even though this is just a Poison Fang and it is debuffed. Any damage is significant damage against our Haxorus as we do reach another breaking swipe, while the opponent brings in their final Pokemon, that being the Umbreon. This is really significant for us as we reach another breaking swipe, because now this Umbreon will be 2 times debuffed in its attack, and Umbreon already is not the hardest hitting Pokemon. So here, I'm happy to let our Haxorus go. It's done its job. I can come back in with my Registeel and not have to worry about shielding any of these charge moves from the opponent's Umbreon. And the opponent choosing to throw a Psychic there. I'm sorry, trainer, that is not the correct move, as Foul Play will be stab and will also be dealing neutral damage, whereas the Psychic will be resisted. And that Foul Play actually hits a little bit harder than I was anticipating, and this is problematic for us because the opponent still does have one shield. Our Registeel now getting critically low. We're going for the aggressive farm down, but we are not able to get it before the opponent reaches another Poison Fang, debuffing our defense, forcing us to throw this energy, and this is pretty much a GG, as I will be going down with a shield, which is always a tragedy. Umbreon able to survive on the blessings of its ancestors on a singular HP, but GG, well played to the opponent. Thank you for the match. Umbreon calling game with a snarl. That is just painful. Hopping straight into the next battle, we have Haxorus on the lead against Umbreon. So this is the exact matchup that we want to see on the lead, and the exact safe swap that we want to see as well. Opponent safe swaps their Seviper and we meet them with our Hypno. This crunch will be dealing super effective damage to our Hypno and will get us low, but that's actually okay, as now the Umbreon gets limited farm with these snarls. Opponent will be going for the aggressive farm down. We built up to the Focus Blast. Will the opponent respect the Focus Blast? They do not, as they are content with absorbing that damage, whatever it may be. It ends up being the Ice Punch, but onto their Umbreon, before going for the snarl down, and they do successfully get the snarl down. As we don't want to take any of that damage onto our Haxorus, we do bring in our Registeel. Registeel will be absorbing this damage a lot better than the Haxorus would have been. But looking back, this may have been a misplay or may not have been the most optimal play, as I could have definitely double shielded my Haxorus or even taken one charge move and then debuffed the Umbreon and not have had to worry about the damage as much. But regardless of all of that, getting back to the battle at hand, Registeel is firing off the Focus Blast, which will be shielded by the opponent. As our switch clock is now up and we do not know what the opponent has in the back, we are going to go ahead and pivot into our Haxorus, and the opponent counter swaps us with their Shadow Muck. Muck putting in some serious work here with its poison jabs, forcing us to expend our first shield to protect our Haxorus, and the opponent thankfully is not running Acid Spray. They are running the moveset of Thunder Punch and Dark Pulse, as we are able to shield up that Thunder Punch but not get debuffed in our defense. Able to outpace the Muck, getting to a third Breaking Swipe, which will be knocking out the opponent's Muck. And now we have one shield. Haxorus able to deal heavy damage onto the Umbreon with its counters, but not able to reach another Breaking Swipe, as this endgame will be close. Umbreon does have a decent amount of energy firing off the Foul Play, while our Registeel is energy dry, has to build up all the way to the Focus Blast. The opponent does reach another Foul Play. Will this be knocking out the Registeel? No, it is not, but the opponent throws one final Snarl, and for our back-to-back matches, we do get Snarl down as the opponent calls game. Well played by them. Misplays by me, but you know what's new. Thank you for the match. Hopping into the next battle, we have another great lead here. Even though the opponent's counters will be dealing heavy damage onto our Haxorus, Haxorus does deal super effective damage with its counters to the opponent's normal type. As such, they pivot out into their Duck, and we do meet their Sirfetch'd with our Confusion user, as they are able to reach 2 charge moves. We did swap out a little bit too slowly, which did allow the opponent to reach 2 Leaf Blades, getting our Hypno critically low. However, we were able to maintain alignment and are able to fire off 1 Confusion as well as this next Ice Punch. Ice Punch does decent damage to the Vigoroth, but will be in no way threatening their shields, as the opponents, at least in the early battles of the MonoType Cup, were not respecting the potential Focus Blast from Hypno, and I'm guilty of that myself. As you'll see in one of my upcoming videos, my opponents do start running Focus Blast, and I don't always respect them, as we counter swap into our Registeel. This may have been a huge mistake, as Registeel is now aligned with the opponent's Vigoroth. As they fire off the Bulldoze, dealing heavy, super effective damage, this Focus Blast will be knocking out the opponent's Vigoroth, but they do choose to preserve their health and energy on the Vigoroth, not able to reach another charge move before our Haxorus is able to knock them out. Opponent brings in their final Pokemon, this being the Kanto Ninetales. Ninetales running the fast move of Fire Spin, but that Fire Spin will now be dealing debuff damage, as Haxorus is once again able to reach another Breaking Swipe. This will put some pressure on the opponent's shield, and they do of course choose to expend their final shield to preserve the health of their Kanto Ninetales, but they are unable to reach. They would have needed 3 charge moves, or they were more than likely going for the farm down, I suppose. But regardless, Haxorus calls game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. Hopping into the next battle, we have just a little bit of wait time here, building up the anticipation, as Haxorus needs a little bit of rest and recovery time after 1v2ing its opponents, but we do have an Electrode on the lead. This is another positive lead for us, as Haxorus, being a Dragon type, will be resisting these Electric type fast moves or Volt switches from the opponent. Haxorus is able to outpace the Electrode, throwing on CMP tie or misaligned CMP, as we do sneak in 1 counter there, but we will be respecting the neutral damage from the opponent's Foul Play. As Haxorus able to reach once again another charge move, but we do choose to catch that move onto our Hypno. Was that a great play? Maybe not, as the opponent, even though they are debuffed, they will be firing super effective Foul Play damage into our Hypno, and now we are getting outpaced by the opponent's Coffin. As we do respect the damage, that Dark Pulse would have knocked us out, and we're going here for the bait. Will the opponent call the bait on the Ice Punch? They do not, as they expend the shield, but more importantly, we will not be able to outpace them here, and I instead settle with some damage being good damage, as that Ice Punch will be getting the Coffin on the border of critical health range. And at this point, I know that we have a charge move stored on our Haxorus, and I'm content with coming in, sniping with the Night Slash. The opponent is fully shields down as they pivot into their Clefable, and I immediately counter swap Haxorus into our Registeel. This is just another instance of how strong Registeel is, as it will be an absolute wall, a steel tin wall against the opponent's fairy type Pokemon, that being the Clefable, as they do pivot back into their Electrode, but Registeel able to reach the charge move just before the Electrode reaches another charge move of its own, able to knock out the Electrode, and this is pretty much a GG, as Registeel is just fully 1v2ing the opponent's backline, able to call game with one final charge move before taking this damage from the opponent's Clefable. It will be the Meteor Mash. Registeel can easily survive, going for the BM Zap Cannon just to make sure and allow Registeel to comfortably call game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. Hopping into the final battle for this set, and there you see the strength of Registeel, but also just the coverage or the team synergy that's provided by pairing Registeel with Haxorus. As we get into this final battle, we do have a really terrible lead with a Dragon Breath user, the Shadow Dragonair, aligned with our Haxorus. Even though Haxorus is a Dragon type Pokemon, we're not running Dragon Tail, which is its Dragon type fast move, and as such, we'll be getting chunked down by the opponent's Dragon Breaths. The opponent able to get us extremely low with their Shadow Dragonair before bringing in their Shadow Granbull into our Hypno and able to charm us down. We're forced to bring in Registeel, going for the aggressive lock-on farm down, but we're not able to get it as Granbull survives on a singular HP on the blessings of its ancestors. That is extremely unfortunate, claiming our shield, our first shield, with a close combat before the opponent brings in their Vigoroth. That's a terrible matchup for us, and we're forced to pivot out into our Haxorus. Haxorus will be taking significant damage from that body slam, and the opponent is able to snipe with one Dragon Breath. That singular Dragon Breath seemed like it did 15% of Haxorus's HP, and that is just a tragedy, as at that point, I choose to not delay the inevitable. Call GG. Well played by the opponent, and thank you for the match. So that's our first set. It was a 2-3, but we did have multiple very close matches that came down to 1 HP at the very end. Could have easily been at least a 3-2 or a 4-1 if I had limited my misplays a little bit more. But hopping into our next set, first battle, we have on the lead Haxorus against the opponent's Greedent. This is typically a really good matchup for Haxorus, but we do allow the opponent to throw a body slam without debuffing them first, but they do us a favor and they pivot into their Shadow Machamp. As we do bring out our Hypno, the opponent does not build up past the cross chop, therefore we don't have to respect it, as we now have a ton of energy on our Hypno, but Confusion is just the longest animation ever. We don't throw the Shadow Ball before the opponent gets to the Weather Ball, but we are able to survive the opponent's Weather Ball with our Hypno, claiming the opponent's first shield before getting farmed down by the Shadow K9. Kanto Ninetales will not appreciate Haxorus coming back in, sniping with the Breaking Swipe, but this is going to be problematic for us, as the opponent will be dealing super effective fire type damage to our Registeel, but they do us the favor of swapping out into their Greedent. Greedent will not be appreciating these Focus Blasts from our Registeel, but they are able to debuff us with a Crunch, as Registeel does KO the opponent's Greedent, now debuffed, but still having 2 shields. This is looking like an optimal situation for Registeel, as the opponent claims our first shield, but is not able to do more than that, as Registeel has now reached its Focus Blast and will be calling game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. Registeel, once again, just an absolute tank of a Pokemon. Such great coverage on the meta, regardless of what the meta is. And a quick note from that previous battle as well. Haxorus did reach the Breaking Swipe as the opponent's Greedent was reaching its first charge move of body slam, but we did not debuff them before they were able to throw it. So that was a misplay. You should always look to debuff your opponent so that you take less damage on that first charge move. As we are facing a coffin lead, this is tough for us as Haxorus will be dealing 2 times resisted damage onto the opponent's coffin with its counters, but did land the Night Slash, putting this akariiiXX extremely low, very nearly in critical health range. akariiiXX is able to get our Registeel below 50% health with a Shadow Ball before the opponent pivots into a Registeel of their own. Opponent expending their first shield to protect the health of their shiny minty Registeel before firing off a Zap Cannon into our Registeel, and they are able to get the debuff. Excellent play by the opponent, knowing that we will more than likely be shielding, going for the potential debuff, and able to land that debuffing Zap Cannon. As we are now going to be getting outpaced by the opponent, but we were able to land the Focus Blast onto the Registeel, putting them in easy farm down range for our Haxorus, able to build up a significant amount of energy as we are now at the Night Slash and can throw this into the coffin if it chooses to come in, and it is going to be the akariiiXX. Will the opponent preserve the HP on their coffin? They will not, as they were content with Haxorus expending all of its energy before revealing their final Pokemon, which will be the shiny shaded Blastoise. Blastoise will not be able to hit our Haxorus for any meaningful damage with its fast move of Water Gun, as even though we've talked about multiple times how glassy Haxorus is, the damage from the Water Guns are resisted because it is a Dragon type, and therefore that damage was negligible. The opponent not able to do much with its Blastoise, unfortunately, as our Hypno is able to Confusion down and call game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match, and shouts out to them for having that shiny shaded Blastoise. We are all going to get the opportunity to get one of those in the upcoming Community Day Classic, but everyone knows yours will always be the OG. Hopping into the next battle, we have the same lead with our Haxorus on the lead against the opponent's coffin. We're going to play this out the same way, throw off this Night Slash into the opponent, claim their shield or do the damage, and then swap into our Registeel. We talked a little bit about it in the intro. This team unfortunately doesn't have the best answer for akariiiXX, which is why we are forced to pivot into Registeel, hoping that the opponent themselves pivots out into another Pokemon, but in this instance, they are not. They're staying in with their coffin. They expended one shield. Will they be expending a second shield as Registeel is able to absorb the damage from that Shadow Ball, and they do expend 2 shields. Opponent, seeing the writing on the wall, they know that we may not have the best matchup against this coffin, and because of that, we are forced to bring back in our Haxorus. This may have been a misplay from me, as even if Haxorus is able to land this Night Slash, it will not be KOing the opponent's coffin, and we will more than likely have to expend 2 shields to KO this akariiiXX, as the Night Slash will be landing and the opponent immediately pivots out into their Shadow Charm Granbull. Granbull is putting in some serious heavy lifting here against our Hypno with its fast move of Charm, but the opponent has no more shields. A Granbull without shields is just a huge target, as our Hypno is able to knock out the opponent's Granbull, but not before they put us in critical health range. Hypno going for the Confusion down, but not able to get it as the opponent survives on a singular HP. I shield up my Hypno to preserve the energy on it. We don't know what the opponent has in the back, and it will be a Meganium. I threw the Shadow Ball as it is the harder hitting of the 2 moves, but Ice Punch would have dealt super effective damage there. But regardless, we're able to reach a Breaking Swipe. This will not be enough to KO the Meganium, unfortunately. We do get the debuff, but we throw on CMP ties. Meganium will be calling game with that Frenzy Plant, able to KO our Haxorus. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. I was feeling a little bit bad about throwing that Shadow Ball into the Meganium at the end of the battle there, but I did run the simulations on it after the battle and did realize that Ice Punch does 31% against the Meganium while Shadow Ball does 35. So while Ice Punch is more energy efficient, I only was able to throw 1 fast move in that instance, so I did make the correct play. As we have a fantastic lead on the next battle with the Shadow Kanto Ninetales aligned against our Haxorus. Opponent immediately pivoting into their Purified Dragonair, and we will be greeting this Dragonair with our Registeel. This is perfect for us as Not only is Ninetales a hard counter or a counter to Registeel on the lead, but we're also able to get out the opponent's Dragonair here, which is an extremely hard counter to our Haxorus and which we would, of course, want to avoid. As Registeel gets the aggressive lock on down and will be taking 100 energy into its next battle with the Pokemon that comes into greet it, and it will once again be the Kanto Ninetales. Opponent looking to farm down our Registeel, get an energy lead, but they will have to expend one shield in order to do so. Kanto Ninetales awaiting our next Pokemon, and it will be the Haxorus coming back in, and we're able to reach the Breaking Swipe before the opponent is able to reach their first charge move. This Breaking Swipe will be putting significant shield pressure on the opponent, but they instead choose to let it go as the opponent pivots into their Umbreon, and I do the classic I swap, you swap. They pivot into their Umbreon. I immediately counter into my Hypno. Did I just throw this game? What an absolute tragedy. I am tilting, mauling, so upset, telling myself some very negative things in this instance because we are now aligned against this Hypno, or against this Umbreon with our Hypno. Will Hypno be able to survive one more foul play? It is looking to get this Ice Punch damage onto the opponent's Hypno, but the downside is that Hypno, or Umbreon, is farming us all the way down. As we do bank one Ice Punch, pivot out immediately into our Haxorus as soon as our switch timer is up, and are greeted by the opponent's Kanto Ninetales. Ninetales full sending with the overheat. We're able to expend one shield, claiming all of that energy from the opponent, and will now be bringing nearly 2 Breaking Swipes into this matchup with the opponent's Umbreon. I can easily shield here, get to another Breaking Swipe, apply the debuff onto the opponent, and the only question from here is, after the opponent expends their final shield here, will the opponent be able to KO our Haxorus? They will be, as that was misaligned CMP. But next question, will the Ice Punch from our Hypno that we banked be enough damage to KO this Umbreon? Let's find out. Ice Punch, does it do enough? It does, as Hypno is able to KO the Umbreon, and we are able to overcome our horrible misplays and call game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. Well played by the opponent, horribly played by me. We had the dream alignment there, and we threw it all away with the I swap, you swap. But regardless of that, we're hopping straight into the next battle. We have a tough lead, met with the opponent's Hypno on the lead. We pivot into our own Hypno and are greeted by a terrible save swap. Once again, I just got out of this battle, and here we are again. But this time, at least the Umbreon's wearing a cute hat, right? So we have Hypno into the opponent's Umbreon. Opponent not worried about the output of damage from our Hypno. They're not respecting a potential Focus Blast, and they don't have to, as the Ice Punch lands for negligible damage. Opponent very nearly able to knock out our Hypno with a second foul play. They will be snarling us down, but not before one more Ice Punch lands. And from here, I need to go for the aggressive farm down on the opponent's Umbreon. Will it be too aggressive though? I'm going to expend one shield here, as I will potentially be applying a debuff to the opponent, but no, they pivot back into their Hypno. We throw on horrible timing. We throw on alignment, allowing the opponent to sneak in 4 full turns of fast move for free before pivoting into our Registeel. Remember, the opponent's Hypno is now debuffed, and as such, this Fire Punch will not be doing enough damage to threaten the shield of our Registeel. Registeel is, again, an absolute tank, will be absorbing the damage from this next Fire Punch, but we are now in the yellow health range. Below 50% HP, Registeel able to fire a Zap Cannon, claiming the final shield from the opponent. They are now double debuffed. Will they be able to knock out our Registeel with another Fire Punch? Spoilers, definitely not, as that Fire Punch does even less. We get to another charge move, and this will be the Focus Blast. This will be knocking out the opponent's Umbreon unless they choose to shield, which they do. Umbreon reaching its next charge move, and from here we can go for the aggressive counter down onto the opponent's Umbreon, as they are 4 snarls away. The opponent over farms, not able to throw another charge move before we reach the back-to-back Breaking Swipe, as we'll be firing off this first Breaking Swipe. It will be debuffing the opponent, but it is not enough to knock them out. Should we have thrown the Night Slash? Potentially, as we go for the aggressive counter down. The opponent brings in their final Pokemon, and it will be the Lurantis. Will Haxorus be able to survive these Fury Cutters? It is able to survive, reaching once again another back-to-back breaking swipes, double debuffing the opponents. Lurantis has 1 HP. Are they at the charge move? They are. They're able to reach it, and this is an absolute tragedy as Lurantis survives on the blessings of its ancestors. 1 HP, a singular HP, reaches the superpower and able to call game on our Registeel. GG, well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match, as we do claim our 3-2 set, and that will be the final battle for today's video. Overall, I had so much fun running Haxorus in the limited MonoType meta. Haxorus does have a lot of plus matchups against an overwhelming amount of the MonoType Cup meta. Honestly, what inspired me to run Haxorus in the lead was all of the Umbreons I was seeing on the lead, as well as all of the normal types, specifically Vigoroth and Lickitung, which Haxorus is able to beat in the even 1s and 2s. It was also a lot of fun to utilize that team synergy, allowing Haxorus to provide some debuffs to allow Registeel and Hypno to sweep endgame. I do apologize that some of my misplays prevented me from really demonstrating the power and the utility that Haxorus is able to provide in the MonoType Cup, but as always, I did my best to point out some of those mistakes so that hopefully if you're choosing to run Haxorus for yourself, you're able to have a little bit more success, but able to have at least the same amount of fun that I did. If you made it this far in the video, please leave a comment down below. Let me know how the MonoType Cup is going for you, or if you've just abandoned it completely, and if you're running Ultra League, how's Open Ultra going for you? But that's going to be all from me. Thank you so much for stopping by. Remember to enjoy the small things. Peace.